Good morning, Marwan Rechmaoui.
Good morning.
I'm so glad to have you in the show.
Thank you.
Never thought I'd do it, but, English is always a little question mark for the show. But then again, when you don't speak French and you're such a great artist, it would be really, really a shame to miss your presence in the studios. Everyone knows about your work. You've been all over the world. You're almost exhibited at a lot of world museums as well. But we're here together to talk about your latest work with this Fair Zemel Gallery, which is an exhibit called The Trees Kept Voting for the Axe. We'll come to the title in a little while. I just want to remind our listeners today about the path of your career. You work with a lot of materials. You're a multifaceted artist. You reflect a lot upon your work is a reflection of our contemporary time, questions, world as such. And the title of this exhibit speaks for itself. The trees kept voting for the axe. So we are the trees voting for that axe that seems to be slaughtering us all the time. And we seem to want to be killed over and over again, isn't that?
Because the axe keep convincing the trees that he's one of them because they have a wooden handle. So they fall for it all the time. And it's very much our current state.
Is it a political exhibition for you? Would you consider it as such?
Always. Art is politics.
Art?
Or yes, it's to become an artist, especially in a country that does not support the arts as the government. They don't have funds for the arts. It's a big struggle to become an artist and stay one. Yeah, and that's where the politics fits. It's in the daily thing.
It's in a daily life, yes.
Yeah.
But part of an artist's mission is also to change things around. Part of it.
Part of, maybe.
Or at least you hope to.
Well, I got to the point where no, I don't.
You don't hope to?
I don't expect I'm going to change much. But
this is a scream. It's an appealing scream.
Yeah.
When you title an exhibition like this, and the trees kept voting for the axe, it's a call.
Yeah, it's
to question oneself.
It's the least we can do, just to speak. Because we're not able to do anything else.
But this is how you bring about the change, by making people think about their reality.
True, but when we say change and responsibility, we give it a bigger aura. We'll be disappointed if we expect that. The change will happen in a very small scale, on a small level, in a very personal way with certain people. Who get something from a work I've done or a word I said. It's not it's not gonna change the masses as we expect. It can make a small change in you if you are looking at a piece me or any other artist did. It's a very personal thing, It can open your eyes towards something, but that's about it. So it has to touch many, many, many people to make that bigger change.
Yeah, but you know what they say about the eye opener. This is where it all starts.
Doubt is very important.
Well, when you open your eyes, you start doubting.
Yes.
Obviously. Okay, this exhibit was due way before the blast of August 4, then it was affected by it. It was due like a year before August 4.
It was supposed to be on April 2020.
April 2020, so a few months before. And then it changed it all around.
It destroyed the gallery.
It destroyed the gallery, but it gave you the material to come out with something.
It's true. We had to replace another series, which was also about failures. But because I worked on a new series after the blast, actually 4 months after the blast, we had to replace another series that it was ready already since April. It was a must to show what happened in the blast, because when we entered the gallery on the 5th of August, it was really horrible. Everyone in the gallery was working silently, trying to pick up things from the rubble and trying to put some order into things.
And trying to throw it away, and then you came in and you said, no, don't throw anything away, I'm going to use it.
That's how it happened.
But I mean, did whatever you gathered to work with replace something else that was programmed for the exhibition, or it just came on and added itself on it?
No, it was replaced. It replaced another series I'm still working on, because it's a continuous work, about the Rashid Karame International Fair in Tripoli.
Mm-hmm.
I'm basically rebuilding the structures inside the park, of course on a smaller scale as replicas, to also highlight some issues about failed modernism in Lebanon, and about incompletion of
discontinued work
and discontinuation, and corruption, of course. So
did we mention that already?
Oh, it's our daily bread.
Aren't we the trees that keep voting for the axe?
Yeah, it's really strange how we function in this country.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think the reason is for it? Since you question yourself too.
Wow, that's a very far back in history question.
No, if you were to sum it up.
Well, tribalism plays a big role in grouping people. And we still have a very strong tribal side in us. Now, urban people have less of that, but it's still, because urban space today is not completely urban. You know, the countryside moved in, and people going in and out of a city. Yeah, I mean, tribalism is very... Because when you talk about sectarianism, you find a lot of tribalism inside it.
Yeah.
The reason why this group is different than this group, probably from the original tribe, they decided not to unite under one sect. So
but by tribalism, you mean that people actually exist within tribes, or do they actually behave as tribes, meaning that they're more like followers?
When we say tribe, we have to think about hierarchy immediately, because it's the basic rule in tribalism.
Yeah, but this is the basis of any society in the world, of any structure of society in the world.
Yeah, but if we want to look at the origin of tribalism, we can look at a nomadic group, a Bedouin group, let's say. And there you can see the hierarchy in a much clearer way between the one, I don't know what to call him, because he's not...
The head of.
That's the sheikh, you know, the big one.
The head of.
But the small one is not called an individual even, you know. Individual meaning, you know, being an individual out of the group. So that's something very difficult to do for... you know, a tribal society. Of course, we are not exactly Bedouins today, even though we're becoming urban Bedouins with mobiles and things, and we move around a lot. But we still carry some of that tribal habits. And you can see it a lot in our behavior in the streets also, not only in our political acts. So yeah, it's the first thing that we have to surpass. After we surpass, you know, after it we have sectarianism, then we have class, and you know, there's a lot of levels of separation.
And I'm sure your work leads to thinking about all of this reality. How do you reckon you can actually leave the tribal model?
By being a citizen.
That's a very sophisticated notion for all of us around here.
Yes, of course, because we don't receive the respect of a citizen from our state to start with. So our relation with the state is very shaken and ambiguous.
Maybe we also never expected our
But
state to respect us.
Yeah, because
We
they
let them.
trained us to be like that, you know.
And we accepted it.
Of course, because sometimes there is positive things from that. There's bribes. You know, the state bribes us in some things. Not to go far, you know, we all were, 2 years ago, we were all taking advantage of the banking system that robbed us today. Because they were giving us high interest rates.
Without a blink of the eye.
Of course. So you see, we are part of it.
We are definitely part of it. Well, let's go back to the material you've used. The material that is the destruction, the rebel that remained from the gallery. You used it and you compressed it.
I did 2 series from the rebels. One is compressed tin. That was I consider it the guts of the walls, you know, the guts of the gallery, because it's very similar, like, you know, when someone's feeling sick. And the other series is from the aluminum windows, you know, the bars that make the frame of the aluminum window. So, but to say something that on the 5th of August, when I was very much affected from what I saw inside the gallery, and I asked the guys to keep things, not to throw them, I started to put them, you know, in order on the floor. And then they were left there till mid-January or late January. And then I came into the gallery and I decided to keep them the way they are. So basically, I just asked for wooden boards to fix them on them in the same order. And then they were hung on the wall. And the tin, they were taken to a compress, to a machine that press metals. And they were compressed into 34 pieces, I think. 34 different pieces. And the total of the weight was 600 kilos of tin.
Oh my God.
Which is a light material relatively, because it's very thin.
Which are the cubes that you can see once you enter the gallery.
Yeah, yes.
And an order for you is very important.
I think for everybody it's important, because how can you work in chaos? How can you think or function in chaos? Even though...
Funny you should say that, but we live in chaos.
Of course. That's what gives us an advantage in a way, that we can think in chaos. But that's not the ideal situation, you know. We're not supposed to do this. Again, we got trained to do this. This is not how a normal person should...
And it even led to a word that is used and that we are associated with, and it's resilience.
Yeah.
Which obviously comes from chaos.
Yeah. And
having to adapt to chaos.
Yes. Yeah, that's like a knife with 2 edges, you know. It's good.
I would say
good
more than
bad.
2 edges. More than 2 edges at this point.
Okay.
I personally dread
like
it.
The ninja star, you know.
Absolutely. Okay. It is known about your work that it actually mixes a lot of materials, and we can see it in this exhibition. It's always harder to talk about an exhibition on the radio as compared to television, where you can show stuff, but I'm hoping people can either imagine it or even go and see it physically or on the internet. I'm sure they can. There are a few pictures in on the site, right?
Yes.
That they can consult.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think next week they're going to have virtual tours also.
Virtual tours.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's very safe to go there. I mean, there isn't such a big crowd.
No, and it's a huge space.
It's
you know, you can
yes.
stay 10 meters away from the
each other.
Yeah.
Okay. Then the whole idea is also to depict the coastal Lebanon, coastal Beirut, which has been affected not only by the blast of August 4th, but by the years
of course
that have gone by. It has completely changed the scenery of this coast.
Yes.
What does it tell you? What do you feel? How do you feel about it?
I feel bad about it, of course, because it could have been saved in a different way. I'm talking at least about the stretch of Corniche between St. George and the port.
It's funny you should say it could have been saved in a different way. It hasn't been saved at all.
It was saved by dumping it in the sea and gaining more land. It's money at the end. So it was transformed, but it could have been kept, renovated simply. They just bulldozed everything, and it's characterless today. But that doesn't mean I'm against change and advancement.
I mean, you don't consider this advancement?
No, because look where we got to after 30 years.
This is wrecking.
Yeah. I mean, you have no more connection with the city. That's what happens when you bulldoze your memory. It's a blank space. Even though you build a new center or a nice building, it needs time to produce more memories for you. So there is a blank in some area.
So you cherish basically the identity concept, not that you want it to remain still in time.
Of course not.
You want it to evolve, but you don't want it to be completely separated from what it was.
You cannot leap to the future when your other leg is in the air. You have to be solid on the ground, and then you can step forward or backward, however you want. The problem is that in the 90s, we tried to forget the war without resolving many issues in it. And these issues were not, they don't evaporate. They stay, but they become more dormant inside us, to the point where it becomes very complex to see it.
I'm not so sure they're still dormant. I think they've come out completely.
Now, yes, but we thought in the 90s and early 2000s that things are calm, but
I think we wanted to believe it so bad.
That's the problem.
But you can't always blame it on people. I mean,
no. There was a lot of temptations to forget.
Yes, and plus maybe there was a need to just live.
Yes.
So many years were taken away from us.
Of course.
And still are. Well, you drew a map of this coastal area of Beirut and you mixed materials. You mixed a solid material, which is concrete, with beeswax.
Yes.
Which is completely flexible.
Yes. The beeswax, when you are working with it, when it's hot, it's liquid. It's like water. And when it cools down, it freezes, like water when it cools down. So using the wax was, like a substitution for water.
So it can slip away between your hands.
Exactly,
but you can also grab it.
Yeah, when you freeze it, you make
when
it
you
ice.
Freeze and make of it what you want to make of it.
Exactly.
And is that your message, sort of?
No, I did not go that far. Again, I don't usually think about a message. The work is always a reflection on something.
But what does it reflect on you? And then it doesn't have to be shared by someone else. I agree with you. Everyone has his own emotions in front of a work of art.
Yes. It makes me not to forget that nothing is stable. Things are evolving all the time.
Everything keeps changing all the time.
Everything keeps changing. So,
does this scare you?
To be honest, maybe a little bit, but it's more of a melancholia than fear. The past moments and the present moments, what's coming in the future. Future always it's not melancholic, but the present and the past, give that emotion.
But that
preserving a moment.
Yeah, but that melancholic feeling is something that we need to rely on, we as human beings.
Some people think it's a disease.
I don't think so.
Of course not. But melancholia usually used to be like you need to go to what's it called, Maristan. The mental, it was considered a mental situation.
Yeah. But a feeding mental situation. Today.
But that's the difference between the poet and the mentally disturbed. They are both mentally disturbed, but
In a different way.
yes.
Okay, I'm trying to depict this exhibition to our listeners this morning. When you enter the gallery to the left, you have these blocks that are compressed material from the rebels of the gallery. Then we go towards the end. There are drawings, which you don't always do or exhibit, actually.
Yeah, because of the continuous lockdowns we were having, it was difficult to get to my studio. So I needed to work use my hands, you know. I always do drawings, but this time I showed a lot of drawings because I wanted to show the lost 2020 of our life. You know, that's what I did in 2020. So I wanted to put that we existed, you know, I have a proof.
You say you always do drawings. What do you do with them usually?
Put them in the box.
And they may come up one day.
Well, yeah, but unless I want to say something with them, then I can compile them. But usually the drawing is just like the Beirut by the sea. It's to preserve a moment, flying moments. Now the difference, just to say, you know, the processes in the first two rooms with the sculptures, it's totally different than that drawing room you're talking about. It's totally opposite processes. The sculpture needs planning, needs time, needs materials, a lot of different materials. You have to set up things, you have to calculate things, and then you cast. And it's an irreversible process. You know, once it's done, it's done. If it doesn't work, you have to throw it. While in painting and drawing, when you're working on a flat surface as a canvas or a paper, you have more courage because the detail that you didn't like, you can just work over it, which gives the richness also to the drawing. So you don't have to hesitate a lot. You know, you just go ahead and do the drawing. And I usually do those, and next morning I look at what I did. I might retouch something or just leave it as it is.
But you're happy you grasped the moment.
Of course, of course. It's realizing facts is something very pleasurable.
Have you often thrown a sculpture?
Yes.
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 There's no way you can melt it and work it again, whatever material it is.
No, I don't use bronze or you know, this you can do that with bronze or with some metals, iron or whatever. But if you're working with concrete or
which
carbon,
is your specialty.
It was a need to, because you know usually the idea dictates the material. So if I'm doing a replica of a building, might as well do it in concrete, not cardboard and painted concrete. You know, I go straight to the material because I don't want to distract the viewer for secondary things. Like if I paint a color or if I imitate a material, then the viewer might take it to a philosophical dimension, you know, which was not there. I just need the viewer to focus on the plain, simple idea I present in front of them.
It seems to be very important for you, that simple notion, that authentic, genuine thing, not to complicate things in your work.
Of course, you get to people easier that way. It's and you don't complicate things because things can be very simple, you know. I mean, it just needs some intelligence and common sense.
Yeah, but when you're talking about art, there's always this notion behind art that it has to make you think and guess and criticize and analyze. You don't seem to like that part of it.
The way I judge art is if I go see a work and it makes me want to work, that means it's a good work. When you leave a strong exhibition, you feel you need to go work, do something. Which means that you learned a lot without knowing. But
you're talking as an artist here.
Yes.
not as a commonplace citizen.
Well, I don't know if other artists also think. I'm talking about myself now. I mean, that's the way how I يعني, look at the art.
Are you more sensitive to a particular form of art when you go to see other people's work?
I didn't get the question.
Well, are you more sensitive to painting, to sculpture, to movies, to
good work?
whatever it is?
Whatever it is.
Okay.
But of course, because of my specialty as a visual artist, you know, as a painter, started as a painter and sculptor, this domain interests me the most. You know, and it's not an era. You know, it's not about the work of an era. You know, I can be looking at a Renaissance painting, and then looking at the Duchamp work, and then probably someone who is a colleague. Yeah, that's how my relation with that domain of arts. Of course, reading is very important.
Marwan Rechmaoui, what do buildings mean to you?
The ones I make are about failures.
Why do you use buildings to represent failure?
Because we can still easily see them in reality. They are existing buildings. They're not abstract buildings. You know, when I work on the Mur Tower, it's a very specific building in Beirut, Lebanon. You know, it's on Army Street with next to the tunnel. We all know that Burj Al Mur is a failure because it was never used for what it was intended.
It was never finished to begin with.
It could have been finished later, but there was a lot of bureaucracy in the thing. And it was only used as military purposes, whether in militia days or now the army is there. The Nimayers in Tripoli, Rashid Karame, they're also about failure because they were never completed, and his intention to connect Tripoli with the Mina failed because the connection was not finished. When I work on Ya'ubian building in Ras Beirut, it's also about how Beirut rose in the early 60s, and then the decline started in the 90s, in the mid-70s. You can see that on the facade of the building, how it changed, it transformed. I'm not saying better or worse, but that was not the intention of that building. You know, when architects present you with a maquette, it's usually a promise. You know, this is how the real thing gonna look, and then the promise looks so much different.
Marwan Rechmaoui, in this exhibition, since we are mentioning the buildings, that there is a series of columns that are basically buildings of Beirut, of course. It looks like a homogeneous whole, while very different at the same time for each building.
If we're talking about the pillars, these are abstract buildings. These can be any building after an explosion or after a fire. But they are abstract works, totally from memory and imagination, in opposed to the other buildings, which they have a reference. You know, I measure the building, the base, the height, how many floors. And the pillars, no, it's totally imagination and abstraction. Of course, with a lot of motifs from destruction. Images from the July War 2006, images from Syria from 2014 and on, images of any disaster around the world, you know. It will be compressed. Also, they are compressed, similar to the thin ones.
You mentioned deconstruction, you mentioned destruction, but these pillars can also be seen as someone or something to rely on.
On purpose, I left the iron bars protruding from the top, similar to what we see in villages around Lebanon, when they build a floor and then they keep the iron on the top visible, which means they're going to build another floor sometime. So they have something about continuation. They're not completely about destruction or death. They have something about continuation within all this mess, that we are looking at.
I heard an explanation. I heard you explain in a video that these pillars are sort of the 7 pillars of wisdom. And it took you back to the Sykes-Picot agreement, which divided the whole area, and which seems to be today divided differently.
Of course.
And that comes to your point of ever-changing situation, maybe more in this area than in the rest of the world. But it seems to be ever-changing.
Of course. Originally, I wanted to do 7 pillars. And I chose the title of Lawrence of Arabia's memoir, The 7 Pillars of Wisdom, because for me he's the reference to Sykes-Picot Treaty. And in the past 60 years, we're trying to build on pillars that they were not really solid. And we ended up from 90s till today, the decline and the fall apart, and those pillars who carry the structure were falling apart because they were not done in a solid way originally. So this is the continuation of Sykes-Picot, and then we have something like ISIS a few years ago, when they try to remove the borders. So this dream of the unification still exists, but in a more twisted way. I think we should not unite. Everyone should build his own state, become a citizen with rights and duties, and that's the only way we can live together.
What do you mean by we should not unite?
The dream of union between the Arab countries, which is a nationalist dream, it proved to be a failure,
Why does it work in Europe? Well, I don't know how much you would consider it's working in Europe.
Because they resolved issues first, and then they built things on a very clear basis.
So it's basically because of unresolved issues.
Of course. I mean, you cannot.
But otherwise, you think it would work? I think it's more difficult.
Of course, but don't forget that Europe, it took 50 years before they start to think about union. And they had 2 major great wars, between each other. So they resolved a lot of issues. And the Europe we know from after the Second World War is the Europe that is trying to forgive itself from what it did in the war. That's why we had a lot of human...
And still is.
Yes. We have the respect for the person, the individual, human rights, laws are very clear. These issues we still don't have. If you talk about one law in Lebanon, you'll have 10 different opinions.
Not only in Lebanon. It has to begin with acknowledgement.
Of course.
Before you even start, forgiving. That's the first step, and we're really far away from that.
Yes, and we're getting further away from it also.
I think so too, unfortunately. What do your buildings? I know they allude to destruction as well and unfinished business. What do they say about the city?
It's difficult because, when I talk about a building, it's like I pick it out from the city to work on it and then put it back. So for me, they are about cases in the building.
Empty cases too?
Probably, or complicated cases. It's like, for example, now we're here at the studio. We're very much also isolated from outside.
Yes.
So we are in the building, not in the city now.
We have no connection to the city, none whatsoever.
Yeah. I mean, anything we might do in here will have to be inside the building. When you're outside on the street and looking at the building, you're seeing the city. So my projects about buildings are issues that are inside the building. So you only look at it. But of course, when you put them all together, you start forming a picture about the city. Of course, the work might look pessimistic, but my attitude is optimistic. So you can feel that in the work. And you know that there is, the energy.
Not necessarily. I don't agree with you, because it seems, when you look at it, it's an unfinished business. And unfinished business is an open door.
Okay.
It's not always a look to the past.
It's true.
It's also a look towards the future.
It's true. It's about opportunities. Yes. And it's also similar to the iron bars and the pillars.
Absolutely.
So, see, we're connecting things now.
Marwan, Rechmaoui, I mean, we tried to take our listeners through a tour of your exhibition, and the trees kept voting for the axe, which will go on till mid-August, you said?
Yes, till the 14th of August.
14th of August. If I were you, would have stopped it on the 4th of August.
That's a good idea. We might still do that.
I think so. I mean, it's really worth it.
It's yes.
With a finale.
I think it's a genius idea. Because originally one of the titles were 4th of August. But then we thought it's too soft and cliché. But to stop on the 4th is a good idea. I'm gonna consider it.
It was great having you in the show, although it was in English for the listeners who are used to French here. It was a pleasure having you. Hope we can do this again.
Hope so too.
For your next exhibition. You know where you're going next?
Yes.
Can you share it with us?
I started working on a series of satellite images of Arab cities. Basically the 22 members in the Arab League. Again, unification.
They're fighting a lot these days.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's gonna be my next a year. It's gonna be a year work.
For Lebanon or for abroad?
We'll see.
You'll see.
No ties yet.
Do you always share it here? Whatever you do is always shared in Lebanon as well, or not necessarily?
Eventually, yes, but sometimes later. Sometimes it's done and it goes outside for a show, and then later it's included here in some other shows.
And there's no reason, no rhyme for this. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, time is not linear. It goes back and forth.
Time is definitely not linear. Thank you so much, Marwan Rechmaoui. I hope you'll get the best out of it. And I do encourage people to go and see it. Very interesting exhibition. And also, I know you don't like the idea of it, but please dwell there and take the time to think about what you're seeing and try to reflect it on your life. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And have a good day.
Thanks.